The metal crate slammed down with a heavy thud, and Do-hyun wiped the sweat from his forehead. Another day, another 100 containers to move across the loading dock of Helix 7. The massive space station hummed with activity all around him. Merchants shouted in a dozen different languages. Ships docked and undocked with mechanical precision. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed. Do-hyun had been working at this spaceport for 3 years now. It was simple work, honest work, the kind of work that didn't ask questions about your past or why a former soldier was hauling freight at the edge of known space. He liked it that way. After everything that happened with the military, all he wanted was to disappear into the background noise of the universe. He grabbed the next container and activated his loader harness. The hydraulics hissed as they took the weight. He was halfway to the transport shuttle when the first explosion hit. The blast wave knocked him off his feet. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. Smoke billowed from the civilian sector, thick and black. Then came the screaming. Do-hyun scrambled to his feet, military instincts taking over. His eyes swept the chaos. People ran in every direction, trampling each other in panic. Another explosion ripped through a nearby restaurant. Fire bloomed against the metal walls. The air tasted like burning plastic and fear. That was when he saw her. A small child stood frozen in the middle of the loading bay. Her skin shimmered with an iridescent blue color that marked her as Vryn, one of the alien species that had recently begun peace talks with humanity. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her large amber eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down her face. "Mama!" she cried out, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Do-hyun didn't think. His feet were moving before his brain caught up. He ran toward her as a third explosion shook the entire station. The lights flickered. Support beams groaned under stress. He was 10 meters away when he saw the ceiling start to collapse. The massive structural beam came down like the hand of an angry god. The child looked up, still frozen, unable to move. Do-hyun pushed his legs harder, lungs burning. 5 meters. 3 meters. He dove. His body slammed into hers, wrapping around her small frame as they tumbled. He twisted in midair, putting his back between her and the falling debris. The beam hit him with crushing force. Pain exploded across his shoulders and spine. He felt something crack. Definitely ribs. Maybe vertebrae. He didn't let go. More debris rained down. Sharp metal shrapnel tore through his work clothes, biting into his flesh. Something hot burned across his left arm. The child whimpered beneath him, and he pulled her closer, making himself smaller, making his body a better shield. "It's okay," he gasped in broken Vryn tongue, one of the few phrases he'd picked up working the docks. "Safe, you're safe." A chunk of burning composite material landed on his back. The pain was incredible, white-hot and all-consuming. His vision started to gray at the edges, but he could feel the child's heartbeat against his chest, fast but steady. She was alive. That was all that mattered. The explosions continued. 4, 5, 6. Each one sent new showers of debris falling. Do-hyun's world narrowed to a simple equation. Keep breathing, keep covering, keep the child safe. His training from years ago surfaced through the pain. Protect the civilian. Complete the mission. Don't let anyone else die because of your failure. Not again. Time became meaningless. Seconds felt like hours. He might have blacked out. He wasn't sure. All he knew was the weight on his back, the heat, the pain, and the small body he refused to release. Finally, voices cut through the chaos. Human voices. Vryn voices. "Emergency responders, over here. I've got survivors." Hands grabbed at him, trying to lift the debris. Do-hyun wanted to help, but his body wouldn't cooperate. His arms felt like dead weight. His back screamed in agony. "Sir, we need you to let go of the child. Let go." No, not until he knew she was safe. Not until he was sure. "Sir, please. We need to treat your injuries." A different voice then, speaking in Vryn. Urgent. Desperate. Female. Isul. "Oh gods, Isul." The child stirred beneath him. "Mama?" The word cut through Do-hyun's failing consciousness. "Mama." Good. The mother was here. The child would be okay now. He forced his arms to loosen, though every muscle fought against it. Gentle hands pulled the child away from him. He heard her crying, calling out, but the sounds grew distant. Someone rolled him onto a stretcher. More hands prodded at his injuries. Someone said something about extensive trauma and immediate surgery. Through his blurring vision, he saw her. A Vryn woman. tall and elegant even in her panic, held the small child against her chest. The child was crying but appeared unharmed. Not a scratch on her. The woman's eyes, the same amber color as the child's, found his across the chaos. She stared at him with an expression he couldn't read. Shock, disbelief. Something else. Something deeper. The child reached out toward him, her small blue hand stretching across the distance. Don't go. Don't go. The mother held her daughter tight but didn't look away from Do-Yun. She said something in Vrin, too fast for his damaged brain to translate. Then the emergency responders were lifting his stretcher, rushing him toward the medical bay, and he lost sight of them both. His last conscious thought was simple and clear. The child was safe. He had done it. This time he had saved someone. Then the darkness took him, and Do-Hyun knew nothing at all. Somewhere behind him, in the smoke and chaos of Helix 7's worst terrorist attack, a Vrin diplomat named Mi-young held her daughter close and watched the human who had sacrificed everything for a child he didn't know. Her hands trembled. Her world had just shifted on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about humans had just been challenged by one man's impossible act of courage, and she knew, with absolute certainty, that she could never let him simply fade away. Do-Hyun woke to the sound of machines beeping and the smell of antiseptic. His entire body felt like it had been run over by a cargo hauler, twice. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his spine like lightning. Don't move. A firm female voice spoke in accented standard. You'll tear the repairs. He forced his eyes open. A human woman in a white medical coat stood beside his bed, checking readings on a holographic display. She had short gray hair and the tired eyes of someone who had seen too much. Where am I? His voice came out as a croak. Medical wing, Helix 7. I'm Dr. Hana. She pulled up a chair and sat down, her expression serious. You've been unconscious for 3 days. We had to rebuild most of your back. 4 fractured vertebrae, 7 broken ribs, severe burns across 40% of your body, internal bleeding, and more shrapnel wounds than I could count. Do-Hyun processed this information slowly. The child? Dr. Hana's stern expression softened slightly. Not a scratch on her. You did your job well. Too well, maybe. You'll be in recovery for months. The burns will heal, the bones will mend, but your spine... She shook her head. You'll walk again, but heavy labor is out. Those days are over. He should have felt something about that. Fear, maybe, or anger at losing his livelihood. Instead, he just felt tired. She's really okay? See for yourself. Dr. Hana nodded toward the door just as it slid open. The Vrin child from the dock ran into the room, her blue face lighting up with joy. Behind her came the woman he vaguely remembered from the chaos, the mother. You're awake. The child spoke in surprisingly good standard. She stopped at the side of his bed, suddenly shy. In her hands, she clutched a piece of paper covered in colorful drawings. I made you a picture. Do-Hyun managed a small smile despite the pain. It's beautiful. Thank you. The mother stepped forward. Up close, she was striking. Her iridescent skin caught the light in subtle ways. She wore elegant robes that marked her as someone important, but it was her eyes that held him, intelligent, intense, and currently filled with an emotion he couldn't quite name. I am Mi-young, she said, her standard perfect. This is my daughter, Isol. You saved her life. Anyone would have done the same. No, Mi-young said firmly. They would not have. Most ran away. You ran toward danger. You used your body as a shield. You nearly died. She paused, struggling with something. In my culture, this creates a debt that cannot be simply thanked away. It is called Catherine, soul protection, the highest bond. Do-Hyun didn't know what to say to that. He had just acted on instinct. The same instinct that got him kicked out of the military for refusing orders. Over the next few weeks, Mi-young visited every day. She brought Isol, who would sit beside his bed and read him stories in Vrin, her small voice steady and clear. The child had developed an attachment to him that seemed to go beyond simple gratitude. She held his hand during the painful physical therapy sessions. She brought him drawings and small gifts. Mi-young watched these interactions with an expression that grew softer each day. During one visit, while Isol was distracted with a puzzle game, Mi-young asked him about his past. You were military, she said. It wasn't a question. How did you know? The way you move, even injured. The way you assess rooms when you enter them. The scars that aren't from the attack. She paused. Why did you leave? Do-hyun hesitated. He never talked about this, but something about her direct gaze made him want to be honest. I refused an order, he said quietly. We were supposed to fire on a settlement during a border conflict. Intelligence said it was a military target. I looked at the scans and knew they were wrong. Civilian housing, families, children. He stared at the ceiling. I refused to shoot. Turned out I was right. But the military buried it. Discharged me to keep me quiet. Mi-young was silent for a long moment. Your people speak of Earth's military as ruthless, efficient, without mercy. Yet here you are, a man who sacrificed his career for principles, then sacrificed his body for a child you didn't know. She leaned forward. The irony is not lost on me. I'm not special. I just did what was right. That, Mi-young said softly, is exactly what makes you special. When Dr. Hana finally cleared him for discharge, Do-hyun faced a new problem. His savings were gone, spent on medical costs not covered by station insurance. His old job was impossible with his injuries. He had nowhere to go and no way to earn a living. Mi-young solved the problem before he could even voice it. You will stay with us, she announced. In the diplomatic quarters. I have arranged everything. I can't accept that, Do-hyun protested. I'm not your responsibility. You are exactly my responsibility. Her tone left no room for argument. Catherine is not a small thing in Vrin culture. It is sacred. You protected my daughter with your life. I will ensure you have everything you need to recover. This is not negotiable. Do-hyun wanted to argue more, but Isul grabbed his hand and looked up at him with those huge amber eyes. Please stay with us, please. How could he say no to that? The diplomatic quarters were far nicer than anywhere Do-hyun had ever lived. His room was spacious, with a real window showing the stars beyond the station. The common areas were warm and comfortable. It felt like a home, something he hadn't had in years. He fell into a routine. Morning physical therapy, then helping Isul with her homework while Mi-young worked. He discovered he was good with the child. Patient, kind. She responded to him in ways that surprised them both. In the evenings, he would cook dinner using ingredients from the station market. Human food, Vrin food, sometimes fusion dishes that made Isul laugh when they turned out strange. Mi-young would return from her diplomatic meetings tired but smiling when she saw them together. One night, about a month after he moved in, Do-hyun couldn't sleep. The pain medication made him restless. He walked into the common room and found Mi-young standing at the window, her posture tense. Can't sleep either? He asked. She turned, startled. I was speaking with Vrin officials. They question my judgment. They say keeping you here looks like propaganda, that I'm being soft toward humans. Her voice was tight with frustration. They don't understand. Maybe I should leave. I don't want to cause you problems. No. The word came out sharp, almost angry. She took a breath, controlling herself. No, they are wrong. What you did matters. Who you are matters. I will not let them make me abandon someone under my protection. She looked back out the window and Do-hyun saw something in her reflection. Determination, yes, but also something more. Something that looked like loneliness, thank you, he said quietly. For everything. Mi-young didn't turn around, but he saw her shoulders relax slightly. You gave me my daughter's life. This is nothing. But they both knew it was more than that. Something was growing between them, undefined and complex. A connection forged in fire and strengthened through daily proximity. Neither of them was ready to name it yet. But it was there, undeniable as gravity, pulling them towards something neither had expected. Life in the diplomatic quarters settled into a comfortable rhythm. Do-hyun found himself becoming part of Mi-young's household in ways that surprised him. He helped Isul with her language studies, teaching her human idioms that made her giggle. He maintained the living space and prepared meals. Small things, but meaningful. More importantly, he started to feel like he belonged somewhere again. Mi-young noticed the changes in him. The haunted look in his eyes faded. He smiled more. When Isul threw her arms around his waist in spontaneous hugs, he no longer froze awkwardly. He hugged back. They worked well together, falling into an easy partnership. Mi-young would return from difficult negotiations and Do-hyun would have tea ready, the exact way she liked it. He never asked about her day unless she wanted to talk. He just provided steady, calm presence. Isol bloomed under the attention. She had always been a bright child, but now she laughed freely and chattered constantly about her day, seeking approval from both her mother and Do-hyun equally. One evening, after putting Isol to bed, Mi-young poured them both glasses of Vrin wine and sat across from Do-hyun in the common room. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Counselor Vec is coming to Helix 7 tomorrow. He's a hardliner from the Vrin High Command. Very traditional. Very suspicious of humans. Should I make myself scarce? No. He's coming specifically because of you." She swirled her wine, watching the light play through it. "He thinks I'm being foolish, that I'm allowing sentiment to cloud my judgment. He wants me to send you away." Do-hyun felt his stomach tighten. "And will you?" Mi-young looked at him directly, her amber eyes fierce. "Absolutely not." The next day, Counselor Vec arrived with his entourage. He was tall even for a Vrin, with darker blue skin and cold eyes. He swept into the diplomatic quarters like he owned them, barely acknowledging Do-hyun's presence. The meeting happened behind closed doors, but the walls were thin enough that Do-hyun heard raised voices. Vec's voice carried sharp with disapproval. Mi-young's responses were quieter but firm. When the doors finally opened, Vec emerged with his face set in hard lines. He paused when he saw Do-hyun standing in the corridor, having just returned with Isul from her tutoring session. "So this is the human." Vec looked him up and down with open disdain. "I expected someone more impressive given how Mi-young speaks of you." "Counselor." Mi-young's voice was ice cold as she followed him out. "You are a guest here. You will be respectful." "Respectful?" Vec turned on her. "You harbor a human in your home. You let him care for your daughter as if he has any right. You parade this foolishness as if it's something noble." He gestured at Do-hyun dismissively. "This undermines everything we stand for. It makes us look weak. It makes us look honorable," Mi-young shot back. "He saved Isol's life. He nearly died doing so. If our honor means abandoning those who protect the innocent, then perhaps our honor needs to be questioned." The silence that followed was heavy and dangerous. Vec's expression went from angry to something colder. "You go too far, Ambassador. There will be consequences for this attitude." He swept toward the door, his entourage following. At the threshold, he looked back. "Choose your loyalties carefully, Mi-young. The council is watching." After they left, Mi-young stood very still, her hands clenched into fists. Isul ran to her mother and hugged her legs. Do-hyun wanted to say something, to offer comfort, but what could he say? "Maybe he's right," Do-hyun said quietly. "Maybe I should go. I'm causing you problems." "No." Mi-young knelt down and hugged her daughter, but her eyes were on him. "You're not the problem. Fear is the problem. Prejudice is the problem. I won't give in to either." That night, Do-hyun couldn't sleep. His back ached, a reminder of injuries that never fully healed. He got up and decided to walk the station corridors, something he did sometimes when the walls felt too close. He was 3 levels down, near one of the maintenance sections when they came for him. 4 figures emerged from the shadows. They wore no identifying marks, but their movements were professional. "Trained. Nothing personal," one of them said. "Just business." Do-hyun's military training kicked in immediately. He might be injured, but he wasn't helpless. When the first attacker lunged, Do-hyun sidestepped and used the man's momentum against him, slamming him into the wall. The second came faster and they exchanged blows. Pain flared in Do-hyun's back with every movement, but he pushed through it. He grabbed a maintenance tool from a nearby panel and used it to block a knife strike. His counterattack was brutal and efficient, targeting joints and pressure points. 2 down. 2 to go. The remaining attackers were more cautious now. They circled him, looking for openings. Do-hyun kept his back to the wall, controlling his breathing despite the agony. One rushed him high while the other went low. He took the high hit on purpose, accepting the pain to throw that attacker over his shoulder. The low attacker got a boot to the face for his trouble. Then station security arrived, led by a sharp-eyed officer named Namhyuk. The remaining attackers scattered, but security managed to capture one. "You okay?" Namhyuk asked, helping Do-hyun sit down. "That was some impressive fighting for someone with your injuries." "Old habits," Do-hyun managed through gritted teeth. His back was screaming, and he could feel blood seeping through his shirt. "Any idea who they were?" "Not yet, but we'll find out." Namhyuk's expression was grim. This wasn't random. Someone hired them, someone with resources and motivation. When Mi-young got the call about the attack, she arrived at the security office within minutes, Isul in tow. The child ran to Do-hyun and hugged him carefully, mindful of his injuries. "I'm okay," he assured her, though he definitely wasn't. Mi-young stood in the doorway, her face pale. She looked at his injuries, the blood on his clothes, the exhaustion in his eyes. Something in her expression cracked. "This is because of me," she whispered. "They're targeting you because of your connection to me." "We don't know that yet," Nam-hyuk interjected. "But I'd advise increased security for all of you." Later, back at the diplomatic quarters with a medical patch on his reopened wounds, Do-hyun sat with Isul between them on the couch. The child had refused to leave his side, and eventually exhaustion claimed her. She fell asleep with her head on his lap and her hand holding Mi-young's. "I almost lost you tonight," Mi-young said softly, staring at their sleeping daughter. "When they called me, I thought..." She couldn't finish. "I'm still here." "For how long?" "They'll try again. Whoever they are, they won't stop." She looked at him finally, and her eyes were wet. "You've become irreplaceable to us, both of us. I don't know what we would do without you now." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Do-hyun reached across Isul and took Mi-young's hand. She squeezed back hard. They sat like that for a long time, a makeshift family bound together by danger and something deeper than either was ready to name. The next morning, Do-hyun received a message on his old military communication channel. He hadn't used it in years. The message was brief and anonymous. "They won't stop. Leave now or the child becomes the target." Do-hyun stared at the words, his blood running cold. The message made it clear. His presence had painted a target not just on himself but on Isul and Mi-young. He had survived the military, survived the attack, survived last night. But could he survive the guilt if something happened to them because of him? For the first time since moving in, Do-hyun seriously considered running. Do-hyun stared at the message for a long time. The threat was clear. Leave or they would hurt Isul. The choice should have been simple. He had no ties to this place, these people. He was just a freight handler who happened to be in the right place at the right time, except that wasn't true anymore. Somewhere between the recovery and the quiet dinners and Isol's laughter, this had become his home. These people had become his family. And the thought of leaving them hurt worse than any physical injury. But the thought of Isul being hurt because of him was unbearable. He started making quiet arrangements. There was a freight ship leaving for the outer colonies in 3 days. The captain owed him a favor from years ago. He could get passage, disappear into the vast emptiness of space, and the threat would follow him away from Mi-young and Isul. His old friend Taejin noticed first. They met at a small bar in the station's lower levels, away from the diplomatic quarter. "You're planning to run," Taejin said. It wasn't a question. The man had worked beside Do-hyun for 3 years. He knew the signs. "I don't have a choice." "There's always a choice." Taejin leaned back, studying him. "You know what your problem is? You spent years running from who you are. From the soldier who wouldn't shoot civilians. From the man who has principles. Maybe it's time to run towards something instead of away. If I stay, they'll hurt Isul." The message was clear. And if you leave, you prove that threatening a child works. You prove that whoever these people are, they can win by targeting the innocent. Taejin shook his head. "Besides, you really think Mi-young will just let you go? That woman looks at you like you hung the stars." Do-hyun started to protest, but Taejin held up a hand. "I'm not blind, friend. Neither of you are good at hiding it. You've found something real. Don't throw it away because you're scared." Before Do-hyun could respond, his comm buzzed. Commander Gisuk wanted to meet him. The name stirred old memories. Gisuk had been his commanding officer before the incident that ended his career. What could he possibly want? They met in a secure conference room in the station's military sector. Commander Gisuk looked older than Do-hyun remembered, with more gray in his hair and deeper lines around his eyes. "I heard about the attack," Gisuk said without preamble. "I have information you need to hear." He pulled up holographic displays showing communication intercepts, financial transactions, and surveillance footage. As Do-hyun watched, a picture emerged that made his blood run cold. The attacks weren't random. They were orchestrated by a joint faction of extremists from both human and Vrin sides, people who wanted to sabotage the peace talks. They had identified Do-hyun and Mi-young's relationship as a symbol that threatened their narratives. "If you leave, they win," Gisuk explained. "They'll spin it as proof that humans and Vrin can't coexist, that bonds between species are impossible. But if you stay and they escalate..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "I'm trapped," Do-hyun said flatly. No, you're positioned. Gi-suk leaned forward. We can stop this, but it requires you to trust me. To trust the process. And to stay right where you are. That evening, Do-hyun sat in his room staring at the travel documents on his datapad. Delete them and he stayed. Keep them. And he had an escape route. A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Come in. Mi-young entered, her expression serious. In her hand was a datapad, his travel documents. Her aide Suki had found them while cleaning. Were you planning to tell me? Her voice was carefully controlled, but he could hear the hurt underneath. I was trying to protect you, both of you, by leaving, by making that decision alone. She set the datapad down with more force than necessary. Do you think so little of me, of us? I think everything of you, Do-hyun said, standing up. That's why I have to go. They threatened Isul. They said if I stay, I know what they said. Mi-young's composure finally cracked. Officer Nam-hyuk showed me the message. Do you know what I realized when I read it? That I have let you become so important to us that I cannot imagine waking up without you here. That Isul calls for you in her sleep. That I... She stopped, struggling with the words. That you what? That I have fallen for you, she said quietly. Somewhere between watching you care for my daughter and sharing quiet evenings over tea, I fell for you. And I hate that you were planning to decide our future, without including me in that decision. Do-hyun felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Mi-young. In my culture, what you did, offering your life without obligation, creates Catharin. I told you this, but what I didn't tell you is that Catharin can grow into something more. It can become Kethamara, soul bond. She stepped closer to him. I feel this bond. I know you feel it too. Don't lie to me and say you don't. He couldn't. It would be the worst kind of dishonesty. I do feel it, he admitted. But that's exactly why I need to leave. To keep you safe. Then let us face this together. She took his hands in hers. You are not alone anymore. You have me. You have Isul. You have people who care about you. Stop trying to carry everything yourself. The door burst open. Isul stood there in her sleeping clothes, tears streaming down her face. You're leaving? Her voice was small and broken. You promised you wouldn't leave. Do-hyun knelt down, ignoring the pain in his back. Hazel ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. I don't want you to go, she sobbed. I need you. We need you. Mi-young knelt beside them, wrapping her arms around both of them. Do-hyun found himself in the center of this small circle of warmth and realized something profound. He had spent years running from connections because connections meant pain. But pain was part of love. You couldn't have one without risking the other. I'm not going anywhere, he said, making the decision. I promise. You mean it? Isul pulled back to look at his face, searching for truth. I mean it. He looked at Mi-young over their daughter's head. We face this together. Mi-young's expression flooded with relief. She pressed her forehead to his, a Vrin gesture of deep affection. Together, she echoed. The next morning, they met with Commander Gi-suk and Officer Nam-hyuk. A plan was taking shape. It was dangerous. It required using Do-hyun as bait. But it was their best chance to end the threat permanently. There's a joint diplomatic summit in 3 days, Gi-suk explained. High-level officials from both sides. The extremists will see it as their best opportunity to make a statement. If we can draw them out, catch them in the act, we can dismantle their entire operation. And the bait? Do-hyun asked, though he already knew the answer. You attend the summit openly as Mi-young's guest. You make yourself visible, vulnerable. We'll have security everywhere, but to the extremists, you'll look exposed. They'll come for him, Mi-young said. It wasn't a question. Yes. But this time, we'll be ready. Isul tugged on Do-hyun's sleeve. She had insisted on coming to the meeting, and Mi-young had allowed it. The child was smart. She deserved to understand what was happening. Will you be safe? She asked. Do-hyun knelt down to her level. I'll do everything I can to be safe. And I have your mom, the commander, and Officer Nam-hyuk watching my back. We're going to stop the bad people so they can't hurt anyone else. Promise you'll come back? He wanted to promise. But he had learned not to make promises he might not be able to keep. Instead, he said, I promise I'll fight with everything I have to come back to you. Isol seemed to accept this. She hugged him tight, then looked at her mother. We have to protect him too. He's ours now. Myung smiled despite the fear in her eyes. Yes, he is. As they prepared for the summit, Do-hyun realized something had fundamentally changed. He wasn't alone anymore. He had a family worth fighting for, and this time he wouldn't run. The summit hall was impressive. Tall ceilings, elegant architecture, and enough security to protect a small army. Representatives from dozens of species filled the space, but the focus was on the human and Vrin delegations. This was supposed to be a turning point in relations between their peoples. Do-hyun wore simple but formal clothes that Myung had chosen for him. He felt out of place among diplomats and officials, but she had insisted. Her aide Suki had explained that his presence was important symbolically. A human living with a Vrin diplomat helping raise her child, it represented the future they were trying to build. It also made him a perfect target. Isol had wanted to come. Do-hyun had argued against it, but Myung made the final call. She needs to see that we are not afraid, Myung said. That we believe in what we're doing. Besides, she'll be safer here with full security than anywhere else. So Isul came, dressed in beautiful traditional Vrin robes, holding Do-hyun's hand as they entered the hall. Commander Gi-suk and Officer Namhyuk were positioned throughout the venue with their teams, invisible but watchful. The first hour passed without incident. Myung gave a speech about cooperation and understanding. Human Ambassador Kyun spoke about shared futures. Do-hyun stood with Isul near the refreshment area, trying to look relaxed while his eyes constantly scanned for threats, old military habits. Then he saw them. 3 individuals moving with purpose through the crowd. Their movements were too coordinated, too focused. 1 was human, 2 were Vrin. They were spreading out, triangulating on positions that would give them clear lines of sight to the stage where Myung stood. Do-hyun's blood went cold. This wasn't just about him. They were going after Myung. He activated his comm with a subtle gesture. Gi-suk 3 hostiles, southeast, northwest, and directly behind the stage. They're moving on Myung. We see them. Hold position. Let them commit, but Do-hyun saw something else. A 4th person moving toward where he stood with Isul. This one was different, smaller, moving like they belonged, and there was something in their hand hidden under a cloth. They're going for the child, Do-hyun said urgently. 4th hostile, my position. Negative, we don't have visual. Do-hyun didn't wait. The 4th person was 10 meters away. 8, 6. He saw their hand move under the cloth, reaching for whatever weapon they carried. He stepped in front of Isul. The person drew a small energy pistol, modified to avoid security scanners. They raised it toward Isul. Do-hyun launched himself forward, putting his body between the weapon and the child once again. The shot hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded through his body, but he kept moving, crashing into the attacker and driving them to the ground. His injured shoulder screamed in agony, but his other hand found the pressure point in the attacker's wrist. The weapon clattered away. Security descended in seconds. At the same moment, the other 3 attackers made their move on the stage. They drew weapons. Myung's security detail moved to protect her, but the attackers were professionals. A firefight erupted. Then Myung did something unexpected. She grabbed the microphone and shouted in both Standard and Vrin, "Stop! Everyone down!" Her voice carried authority that made people obey instinctively. As the crowd dropped, it exposed the attackers completely. Commander Gi-suk's teams had clear shots. Within seconds, all 3 were subdued. Do-hyun sat on the floor, his hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder, with Isul clutching him and crying. Myung rushed over, her face pale with fear. "You're hurt," she said, already calling for medical. "I'm okay. Isul?" "She's fine. You protected her again." Myung's voice broke. "You always protect her." Medical teams arrived. Dr. Hana was among them, giving him a look that clearly said, "Not again." The aftermath was intense. All 4 attackers were taken into custody. Under interrogation, they revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. The network included extremists from both human and Vrin governments, people who profited from conflict and feared peace. More shocking was the evidence that connected the conspiracy to high-level officials. Councillor Vec wasn't directly involved, but his rhetoric and financial connections had enabled the extremists. He was removed from power within days. The attempted assassination at a peace summit, caught on multiple cameras, became a watershed moment. Both governments were forced to acknowledge that their own extremists were the real threat, not each other. In the weeks that followed, Do-hyun recovered from his latest injury. This time, he had more visitors than the medical wing could handle. Humans and Vryn who had been at the summit came to thank him. News services wanted interviews. He became an unexpected symbol of the peace process. He hated every minute of the attention. What mattered was recovering fast enough to get back to Myung and Isul. When he was finally released, he returned to the diplomatic quarters to find them waiting. Isul ran to him but stopped just short, suddenly careful of his injuries. "It's okay," he assured her. "I'm not that fragile." She hugged him carefully, and he wrapped his good arm around her. Over her head, he met Myung's eyes. "We need to talk," she said. Later, after Isul was in bed, they sat together in the common room. Myung poured them both tea, but neither drank it. "The Vryn government has offered me a permanent position," she said. "Leading the new Joint Human-Vryn Colony Commission. It's prestigious, important work. But it means leaving Helix 7, moving to a new world." Do-hyun's heart sank. Of course. She had her career, her responsibilities. He had known this was temporary. "I understand," he said quietly. "You need to do what's best for Isul and your career. That's why I'm asking you to come with us." He looked up sharply. "What?" "Officially, as cultural advisor to the commission. Unofficially." She reached across and took his hand. "As part of our family. In Vryn culture, we have a ceremony. It's not marriage exactly, but similar. It recognizes chosen family, people who are bound by more than blood. Myung, you're just the man who saved my daughter twice, who made our house a home, who Isul calls for when she has nightmares, She paused, gathering courage. "Who I love. I love you, Do-hyun. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. And I think you love us too." He did. God help him, he did. Somewhere between the recovery and the quiet dinners and the shared fears, he had fallen completely in love with both of them. "I do love you," he admitted. "Both of you. But are you sure? I'm nobody special. Just a freight handler with a bad back and a worse history. You're special to us, that's all that matters." She moved closer, taking both his hands now. "Come with us, be part of our family. Let us be part of yours. No more running, no more hiding. Just us." He thought about it for maybe 3 seconds before answering. "Yes." Myung's smile was brilliant. She kissed him, soft and sweet, and Do-hyun felt something in his chest unlock. A part of him he hadn't realized was still closed off, still guarded, finally opened. The ceremony happened 2 weeks later, small and intimate. Isul stood between them, holding both their hands. In Vryn tradition, she spoke for the family, declaring her acceptance of Do-hyun as father chosen, not father born, but equally important. Ambassador Kyun attended, as did Commander Gisuk, Officer Namhyuk, Dr. Hana, Taejin, and Suki, a mix of humans and Vryn who had been touched by their story. Afterward, they boarded a transport to the new colony world. As Helix 7 grew smaller behind them, Do-hyun sat between Myung and Isul, their hands intertwined. "Are you scared?" Isul asked him. "About the new planet?" "A little," he admitted. "But I have you two. That makes everything okay." "We're a family now," Isul said with the certainty only children possess. "Forever." "Forever," Myung echoed, squeezing his hand. Do-hyun looked at them, his family, and felt a peace he had never thought possible. He had spent years running from connections, from pain, from the possibility of loss. But sitting here, holding the hands of the two people who mattered most in the universe, he understood something fundamental. Love was worth the risk. Family was worth the sacrifice. And sometimes the most broken people could build the most beautiful things. Years passed. The colony flourished. Human Vryn families became common. Inspired by the example Myung and Dohyun had set, Isol grew into a remarkable young woman, training in diplomatic service like her mother, carrying both cultures within her with equal pride. On the anniversary of the Helix 7 attack, Dohyun stood before a memorial to those who had died that day. His scars had faded but never disappeared. He carried them as reminders. Beside him stood Myung, now a senior ambassador, and Isul, 17 years old and about to enter university. Isul looked at the memorial, then at Dohyun. "Do you ever regret it? That day?" He thought about the question. About the pain, the injuries that still ached in cold weather, the way his life had been completely upended. Then he looked at his wife, at his daughter, at the life they had built together. "Not for a second," he said. Myung slipped her hand into his. Isul took his other hand. And together, the family that had been forged in fire and strengthened by love stood before the memorial, grateful for the chance that had brought them together. Behind them, the sun set over the colony, painting the sky in colors both human and Vryn found beautiful. A shared sunset for a shared future, and Dohyun smiled, finally at peace.